Ladies and gentlemen, it is 6 o'clock and I will call our special called council meeting to order. And it's my privilege to welcome all of you here tonight, to welcome those in person, to welcome those that are watching online, and those that are on the conference call listening. I want to commend the staff for doing such a great job of making sure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard during this pandemic. They've gone to great lengths to make sure that people can come in person, people can participate by phone, and also we have several people who have written letters and emails that they wish to be read tonight. So everyone's had an opportunity to participate in this. With that, I will ask Reverend James Ashton, pastor of the First Baptist Church, if he would kindly come and lead the invocation tonight. Reverend Ashton, welcome. We're glad you're here.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, ladies and gentlemen. Glad to be here, and such a difficult time. It's good that we have these occasions where we can come together, share common thoughts and common values, but also pray till God is able to bring us through. Maybe bow our heads. Dear wise, eternal God, we give you the thanks for this very beautiful and practical day. We thank you, Lord, for being with us through difficult times and also good times. These, in fact, are the best of times and also the worst of times, but, Lord, you are the master of all the times. And we come, Lord, beseeching your help, your grace, your love, and your uplift. Lord, we come this evening, Lord, with different points of view, but, Lord, we want to disagree and not be disagreeable. But, Lord, to do that, we solicit your guidance, your understanding, and your wisdom, that we might say the right things, that we may move together, universally, on one accord. We, Lord, can set the tone for the nation by what we do here. We ask, Lord, that we do have that wisdom and understanding that you gave to Solomon, that each one of us, Lord, reflect upon where we are and where we need to be, but that we consolidate our thoughts so that this will be one nation under God, united for all. Thank you for this opportunity to share. Bless this town of Farmville, bless our nation, bless our country, bless the world. Help us, Lord, to continue to look to the hills from whence cometh our help, realizing all of our help comes from you. Regardless of our various persuasions and different stages of life, Lord, help us to come together as truly a United States, believing in one God, with one power, for all of us. We thank you for what you're about to do, and we thank you for your guidance and your patience with us. It's in thy name we say it. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Madam Clerk, would you kindly call the roll?
Mr. Cole?
Here.
Mr. Hunter?
Here.
Mr. Benson?
Here.
Mr. Parrott?
Here.
Mr. Dwyer?
Here.
Mr. Reed?
Here.
And Ms. Ames? Here.
Thank you, ma'am. At this time, I will call the public hearing to order to hear citizens' comment on the following: the consideration of the town of Farmville to remove, relocate, contextualize, or cover a town-owned monument or memorial currently located at the intersection of High Street and Randolph Street in the town of Farmville. And before we start with our first guest, just let me remind everyone that there is a 3-minute time limit, and the clerk, there's a clock here, if you can watch the clock, and the clerk will ring a bell when your 3 minutes have expired. We would ask, as the Reverend said in his prayer, Farmville often has an opportunity to lead the way for the nation, and tonight's an opportunity for that. We would ask for civil discourse, for people to be respectful. We realize that it's a very emotionally charged issue, but we can listen, and council is here, by the way, to listen. There will be no action taken tonight. There has to be at least 30 days passed from the time of this public hearing, so there will be no action taken on the statute tonight, and council typically does not engage in dialogue doing public hearings. We're here to listen, we're here to receive citizen input. We just ask that everyone be respectful and follow the rules of courtesy. With that, Madam Clerk, would you call our first guest?
The first guest is Chris Clarkin from Farmville on conference line.
Mr. Calkins,
Yes, sir.
you may begin.
Oh, well, thank you. I'd like to first thank the town council for this hearing, and dealing with the history out there in Southside Virginia, which is where I've lived for the number of years in the Southside, living in the Appomattox. I graduated from Longwood College in 1981 and have written numerous publications on this area, particularly 36 Hours Before Appomattox and the Appomattox Campaign. Well, how many of you have on council have seen the Farmville Herald, and look what it says underneath it. It says, quote, "Honor for the past, help for the present, and hope for the future." And I think that is where the Farmville Herald is at least going. But concerning tonight's objective, we spent a lot of time on who does what and all that. I think it's time for us here in this area, we have an opportunity to provide a unique historic structure, and known as the Farmville Confederate Cemetery. Numbers of bodies are recovered there between 1862 and 1865. Today, about 300, 400 bodies of the Confederate soldiers stationed there, having died in the hospital during the wartime. They were mainly those who were convalescing rather than combat wounds. And April 7th, 1865, brought farmers and the fighting went to town, and fighting which took place through the town and crossed the Appomattox River onto Cumberland and the Heights, and it was known as Jackson Heights. Both General Lee and General Grant passed through the town as they fell back towards the Appomattox River. And with this, all these historic sessions that have taken through the years, has provided tourism to the area, particularly Farmville and Amelia. There is the Appomattox Courthouse, National Historical Park. There's also State Park. The best one is a State Space Park, Battlefield, along with hybrid.
Mr. Calkins,
Yes, sir.
could you finish up in like 30 seconds? Your 3 minutes is
Sure.
up.
Further, I believe that true learning, healing, and growth require more of education and interpretation, more discussion and hard conversations, and preservation but never less than that. Thank you for your time, and take the monument and put it down at the cemetery. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, next guest.
Miss Flora Bolt of Farmville, Virginia.
Ms. Bolt, are you on the line?
Yes,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Your time can begin.
Okay, this is Flora Bones in Farmville, Virginia. I'm a concerned citizen. I am against the taking down of the memorial statue in Farmville and the sneaky, secret way you, the town council, stole it, hauled it away like thieves in the night. You didn't want the protected You just wanted it down. It was hurting no one but only our Confederate veterans. Shame, shame on you. You were just following what the mayor in Richmond and others were doing. I have lived a long time and have never seen anything and people, things and people wanting to stamp out our history as if it never happened. I'm surprised not one council member voted against removing the monument. If he felt it was wrong, he could have voted against it for the record and made a stand. It's that simple. There is nothing racist about the monument, only to honor our great-grandfathers, our uncles, and others who fought in the war to save our state of Virginia, not slaves, as most people seem to think. Let us give that honor to them, not destroy it. I think our governor was wrong when he signed the bill giving permission to the localities to remove the memorials. All our veterans should be honored, not desecrated. This has just given the criminals the go-ahead to do their dirty work. This has hurt and torn down our towns, cities, counties, states, and our country, our United States of America, the greatest country in the world. Some are bent on destroying America, our history, and our Christian values. But thank God for those who are standing up for our rights. Please, please put our precious soldiers, our soldier back on the pedestal where he rightfully belongs. Quit coddling the troublemakers and do the right thing. This is causing a division between the white and black race, hurting our towns and counties, and hurting so many people here. Please, please put our soldiers back. May God bless you all, and God bless America, and thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam Clerk, next speaker.
Next speaker is Naomi Sigaritas.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Thank you to the council for letting me speak, and I also want to thank you for moving the statue from its former location. My comments that I have today are representing me personally, but they are informed by my perspective as a Longwood faculty member who is active with work related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I am advocating for moving the statue to the Confederate Cemetery or Civil War Historic Site or a museum where it can be put in context. As a society, the statues we place on plinths and parks and town squares represent people and ideas that we celebrate. In fact, the Confederate soldier statue was adorned with the words Confederate heroes. As a society, we can no longer turn our eyes away from the history of violence and the denial of basic human rights and decency associated with slavery that is implicitly endorsed in statues that celebrate Confederate soldiers. Therefore, it is not appropriate for this statue and what it represents to stand across from Longwood University, an institution of learning that welcomes people of diverse racial and ethnic identities. Young students should no longer have to pass beneath Silent Sam's gaze ever again as they travel to their classes, nor should people of color from the town of Farmville have to drive by it as they navigate the town. Silent Sam does not represent our town values, and I look forward to its movement to a location outside of town where those who purposely visit it can learn more about this dark period in our history. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next speaker.
Is there a Chris Burke? Please come forward, sir.
Good evening, sir. Welcome.
My name is Chris Burks. I wanted to talk about the war memorial tonight. Did you know that 620,000 Americans died in the Civil War? That is the most Americans died in any war it has ever been in. Next is World War II with 405,399 soldiers. The Civil War is clearly the bloodiest war ever and was on American soil. You hear what these Civil War memorials are supposed to stand for with white supremacy, slavery, Jim Crow, and they're called traitors. I have looked into these accusations, found the opposite with facts. None of the war memorials say anything on them about any of that. The southern states represent only 30% of the U.S. population. They paid 80% of the tariffs collected. Oppressive taxes, denial of the states' rights to govern themselves, pushed the southern states to legally withdraw from the Union. The memorials were put up to remember the volunteers that signed up to fight against an invading army on their home and farms. Many left their families that had to fend for themselves while they were at war. There were 789 that signed up in Prince Edward County. 16 of those were black men. The memorial in Nottoway has black soldiers' names listed on the plaque at the memorial. When you hear what these memorials are supposed to stand for and that they remind people of slavery, then they talk about building slavery museums and memorials for slaves. Does that not contradict itself? I looked at the Farmville Herald from October 12, 1900. They had a town fair for the unveiling, and they gathered upon the consecrated spot upon which a silent figure will ever speak of deeds of glory. It took 5 years to raise money for this memorial. The 8 companies from this county are carved on the memorial. The memorial tells ages to come a story of sacrifice and heroism. The speaker at the unveiling talked about Prince Edward citizens going to war. Quote, how the place overflowed with youthful soldiers, aged citizens, with men and women, blacks and whites, girls and boys. I looked at the council retreat held on June 25th to see what they were about. The 2020 vision statement lists a beautiful and historic community as one. Values have transparency, honesty, open-mindedness, and respect. I have not seen any of this pertaining to the memorial. If you wanted that, it would have been put on the ballot in November and allowed the taxpaying citizens of this county's voice to be heard and voted on fair and square. It should be put back where it was, unharmed, for the last 120 years now, and people vote on it and be fair about it, instead of just taking it upon your own self.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, next guest.
Ms. Desiree Bolden.
Welcome, ma'am.
My name is Desiree Bolden. I'm a proud descendant of several Confederate veterans. 2 grandfathers were patients at Farmville Confederate Hospital. Another who was captured in Prince Edward County and sent to his death at Point Lookout Prison. I wanted to show y'all this picture. Hopefully y'all may know who he is. This is Captain Sam Paulette, one of the many war veterans that the Prince Edward County Veterans Memorial represents. He was also a POW at Point Lookout Prison. Thankfully, he escaped to rejoin the 18th Virginia for the duration of the war. He was 3 times wounded, Manassas, Gettysburg, and Sailors Creek. After the war, Captain Paulette returned to Farmville, where he engaged in tobacco, merchandising, and insurance businesses. He was actually a member of this Farmville Town Council, as well as chief of the fire department. His was a life truly well-lived. He was present at the Veterans Memorial dedication on October the 11th, 1900. His 10-year-old daughter, Virginia Paulette, was one of the children who gently pulled the cord, dropping the canvas to reveal the beautiful Confederate soldier cast in bronze. The Confederate soldier has always been revered throughout the world by persons who have a factual knowledge and understanding of the war between the states for his grit, loyalty, courage, and perseverance. Your Prince Edward County war veterans endured horrific suffering and deprivation that the majority of us can never envision. Their personal services, sacrifices, and deaths to this county and Commonwealth should not be diminished or dismissed by removing or altering in any way the Veterans Memorial from High Street. There's no justifiable excuse to have desecrated their memorial by slyly removing the soldier from atop the base. If any person has no heart for the Confederate veteran or any other veterans, then I truly think they need to evaluate the condition of their heart. I do not know if any of you have veterans in your family. My son is in the United States Navy, as well as a student at Longwood. If you do not find the courage to stand for these veterans, then it's not going to be long before all the other Prince Edward veterans will be unfairly attacked and lied about. Then the beautiful veterans banners that are on the street lampposts will be in danger of being removed. We are already seeing this across the country. What may be happening in some other derelict cities need not set a precedent for Farmville. So I am asking that you as community leaders please respect the significant sacrifices and contributions by returning the soldier to his rightful place atop the memorial base where he has stood for 120 years. Thank you. Sonia, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam Clerk, the next guest.
David Easter.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Desiree. My name is David Easter, the same as my ancestor who fought in the war between the states, David Easter, and his 7 brothers, and I'm proud of my ancestors. They did not have slaves. They fought for their country. That was their state back in the day. The monuments do not stand for slavery. It stands for the honor for those who fought for their state. And I think the monument should stay where it's at. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next guest, Madam Clerk.
Reverend Samuel Williams.
Good evening. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. My full name, James Samuel Williams, Jr. I've been a resident, but soon will be in town of Farmville, 87 years. I've seen many changes take place, transpire in the nation, participated in some, as you know, in the civil rights movement. And what's going on now throughout the nation, things that are transpiring. We do not need, in any community, any kind of physical symbol that's going to resemble slavery, the horrors of slavery, the unethicalness of slavery, the immorality of slavery, that, as it's been stated, that peculiar institution. We don't need anything in Farmville like that. The base, which is there, of the monument or the statue that was there, I do commend you for having taken the action that you did in the removal thereof. Now look at the march in history. I know we are going through a revolution in the country now, health-wise and politics. But look at the steps that Farmville has taken so far. Look behind us at the light of reconciliation. That provoked a lot of thinking, a lot of thought in the mind of the hey, we're coming together. Look at the obelisk up here on High and Randolph. President Reagan predicted that it would come. He said it at a commencement. He said it would be small but powerful, and it is. Now you don't want one thing that's the antithesis of the other thing across the street. You can stand at a statue again and spit over there where the obelisk is, the Egyptian obelisk. We need to bring that together because our destiny, just go by the food here, all of our destinies are interwoven and intertwined. No race can stand alone. Black folk feeding the white folk, or kind white folk, kind black folk, kind red folk, kind brown folk, kind yellow folk. So we carry each other. And I'm glad to see that the farmers, which I was reared, is coming to a new awakening. God bless each of you who shared in the removal and the remainder of whatever else the foundation that's there. We don't need anything there at all. Just reminisce, and every kind of reminiscing. And right across the street, Longwood is for the night. Longwood is saying, what are y'all doing? We are forward marching. The foundation is saying, well, we are standing still. Longwood is combining, or has combined, or has performed a wedding between citizen leaders and civil rights in education.
Reverend Williams, your time is up. Could you finish? Okay, thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, next guest.
Mr. Southern Brunsfield.
Good evening, sir. Welcome.
Yes, sir, you have to keep it on because other people are going to speak into the same microphone.
I'm Southern Brumfield. I've lived in Performance for most of my life.
Excuse me, sir. Check it.
And what I've got to say has got nothing to do with any trade. It is two actions that I think should be taken. Number one, I rode up to the Confederate Secretary yesterday. Very nice, pretty place. It's also totally out of the way. The statue goes up there. It's never going to be seen right. And I think it should be come back. It should be put back where it was. The other one, there's a gentleman that lives in this town. I never really thought he got the credit he should have gotten. And all of the mess that's going on in our country right now makes me feel where you and boys are. This man kept the peace. Reverend Griffin, of course, who I'm talking about. I think we should have a statue to Reverend Griffin. I think it's all along with you. Don't think he's ever gotten really the credit that he should have gotten nationally or maybe even locally. I don't know. I really didn't know him. I'm too old. Anyway, that's my thought. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, next guest.
Mr. James G.
Welcome, sir.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor, members of Town Council, my name is James G., and I'm here this evening to represent the Prince Edward County branch of the NAACP. I want to commend you on the brave and bold action you have taken in removing the statue, and I am hopeful that you continue that boldness by not putting it back and by also removing the base of the statue. We do not need any symbols or vestiges of those who fought against the American Union and in favor of preserving slavery. From my research of the history of the placement of the statue on town property, no citizens of the town voted for such a statue in 1899 or 1900. There was no public participation in the erection of the statue. There was taxpayer money used to erect the statue. In his history of Prince Edward County, Mr. Bradshaw said the Virginia legislature passed in 1900 a special act giving permission to the County Board of Supervisors of Prince Edward to contribute not more than $400 toward the erection of a monument. None of us were here in 1895, 1896, 1899, or 1900. But listen to what Mr. Bradshaw said as to why we have the statue. Mr. Bradshaw says, and I quote, "Into these characteristics of industry, thrift, gracious living, and hospitality, was blended the Confederate tradition, which was a dominant influence in the life of the county. What was that Confederate influence? Slavery. Because slavery was the thing that made the Confederacy. Mr. Bradshaw goes on to say, for some 30 years, it was apparently dormant, because between 1865 and 1895, black people had a chance to participate in the political process. Black men represented the Prince Edward County in the Virginia legislature during that period of time. In fact,
Let me finish your statement.
in fact, several of them lived up on Eli Street at that time and had to walk down Main Street, High Street, in order to pass the statute. We know that this is an issue confronting you. We know also that you have to make a decision as to what to do with it. If you do anything with it, it should be in a museum. We should give it to the museum in Appomattox or to the Historical Society in Appomattox.
Thank you, sir.
If you put it in the Confederate Cemetery,
Thank you, sir.
where you are maintaining it at taxpayers' money, we think you should also give some consideration to giving funds to the
Thank you.
Oddfellow Cemetery in order where most black people are buried in this county. We would ask you to continue your boldness in removing the statute and also removing the pedestal upon which it's posted. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, next guest.
Mr. James Early.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is James Early. I'm originally from the Heron. My family and I moved to the big city of Farmville, and we stayed here since. Astute observers may notice a similarity between my name and the name of a street in town, Early Street. It's the road where the Confederate Cemetery resides. The street and I share a source for our names, Jubal Anderson Early, who was an ancestor of mine, who was a brigadier general for the Confederacy, known affectionately by Robert E. Lee as his bad old man. In addition to being a lawyer, Jubal was a white supremacist, a coward, and an abject failure as a general human being. I mentioned this to make it clear that the concept of heritage, not hate, is a false dichotomy, and an insufficient reason to display and maintain monuments of people who would have 35% of our county's residents be defined as property. I fully acknowledge that mine is a heritage of hate. There's no excuse for allowing monuments like this one in question to remain a blemish in our town. Once other states seceded from the U.S., they made it abundantly, undeniably clear that the continuation of slavery was their motivation to do so. This is an obvious fact historians the world over. Mississippi stated, our position is thoroughly identified with the institution of slavery, the greatest material interest of the world. Louisiana said, the people of the slave-holding states are bound together by the same necessity and determination to preserve African slavery. These two are not outliers in their intent, they are the norm. Keeping monuments like this sends a clear message. We care more about the feelings of dead white men than the well-being of living black human beings. Additionally, the bizarre notion that these monuments are somehow educational and inspire future generations to not commit the same crimes against humanity is easily disproven. Information provided by groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center show a clear link between areas that have publicly funded Confederate symbols and those same areas witnessing the formation and continued operation of white supremacists, neo-Nazi, and other hate groups. In other words, where these monuments are, hate feels comfortable enough to flourish. These monuments are erected by the Daughters of Confederacy to intimidate our black and brown neighbors and perpetuate the myth of the lost cause. These participation trophies have no place in the public eye or the modern world. Farmville deserves better than a monument like this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, next guest.
Griff Aldrich.
He's coming from the other location there.
Could you repeat your name?
Mr. Griff Aldrich.
Welcome, sir. What's your name and your address, or where you're from?
My name is Griff Aldrich. I live on High Street in Farmville. Appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you. First, I'd like to just commend you for your decision to remove the statue. I think I've attended Hampton-Sydney. I coached basketball at Hampton-Sydney and then moved away for a period of time. Have since returned to become the head basketball coach at Longwood. What I've found at Farmville is a very welcoming community, a community that values peace and reconciliation. It's a community that is very steeped with racial challenges, difficulties, and offenses. To me, this statue is, as has been mentioned, another symbol that is offensive to a significant portion of our community. I particularly had a problem with the statue because it's not directed to any individual person. Secondly, it references heroism. That necessarily means that we are celebrating the cause for which the Confederate soldiers fought. Any serious-minded or fair-minded folk would understand that slavery, at a minimum, if not the main reason for the Civil War, was a central contributing part. As such, we are offending a significant portion of our community. At this point in time, that does not seem to be appropriate, it does not seem just, and it does not seem the unifying thing for any community to continue to do. I have 3 children, 9, 8, and 5. They're all adopted. They're all African American. I have to walk these children to my office, which is directly across from that statue. I would ask you, if your children were African American, and you had to explain to them why it is a hero that fought for segregation and for slavery, how you would handle that. At this time, and particularly in this community, our ancestors, those who went before us, committed offenses. If any community should step forward boldly and rectify a situation, it's this community. I've heard people say, well, we may offend those who put the statue up. Well, I want to say, what about those who are offended by it now? What about that community? Are we just going to ignore them?
Coach, your time is up. If you could finish, let you finish your sentence.
Thank you. So, obviously, I want to thank you for your bold step. I thought the manner in which you handled it was deft and tried to maintain peace in the community. My main hope is that we will be able to continue to do that. But thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, next guest.
Reverend James Ashton.
Welcome again, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'm wearing 2 hats this evening. First of all, I want to acknowledge that I thought you did a marvelous job in making that decision, and it was certainly not an easy one. But I want to wear my pastoral hat this evening and talk about just a couple of things. I won't be long. Right behind you, you have some statements there, and also found on the dollar bill, it says, "In God we trust." In our country, we're facing a dilemma because many people don't believe in God or even trust in God. And I would admonish you, but also for future deliberations. I have seen your progress, I've seen the things you've done, and I'm inspired by what you stood for in the midst of problem situations. And I will share with you an acronym that expresses what one does and what one tries to do in a difficult situation. And it's the word help. I've often said that if I were in a ditch and I were African American and I needed some help, I wouldn't call out and say, I'm African American, I'm a black man who's over 80. I'd say help. That means whoever you are, I don't care about it, I need help. I think we should be in the helping business. Help to me means H, being honest in what we do, being hopeful, but also being heroic, despite what people say. We've had a lot said this evening on both sides, and I understand that. But in order to move from here for future deliberations, in order to maintain your sanity and also work for the better part of this community, not only do you need the help, but you also need to use the acronym or the word E for enthusiastic, engaging, and excellent in everything that you do. You have to be engaging with folks, because if you aren't, folks are going to turn you off. But you have to be enthusiastic about whatever you do, even if it gathers the ire of others who may not feel the same way. You also have to use the term, the L stands for be a good listener. And you've done that through the years, and that's wonderful. But continue to do that. Also be a good learner. Realize that there are a lot of things that we don't know about, but we have to find out from all sources so that we can be on spot, on target in our final deliberations. But also be the best kind of leader you can be. Look at the leaders we had in our history and how many people who've been courageous have led us this far. Heroes and unsung heroes, people that have never written about in history books, are people who stood up and said, I must, even if I'm standing by myself, be that kind of individual. And I admire you because you've been there, regardless of what side says what. I'm not here to defend history or look at either side, but I'm looking at it from a perspective of what is God going to do? What does God see? And the last thing, the P stands for patient, stands for purposeful, but also be powerful in whatever you do. Mean what you say what you mean. God bless you. Come and smile upon you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, next guest.
Mr. Joseph Stanley.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having this hearing. Are you able to understand my muffled voice?
Yes, sir.
I'm not accustomed to speaking behind a mask. I'm not the Lone Ranger. But I am a concerned citizen. And I think when any important event occurs, we must consider the basic who, what, when, and where concepts apply to that significant event. The who before us at this moment is this town council. I commend you for doing it the way you're doing it, I believe. The who is also a movement larger than this group here tonight. It is a movement that has been orchestrated in the last few months in our country. It is seen most visibly in the cities, in the crowded metropolitan areas. And if you watched any of it on television, you saw what amounted to the beginning of a peaceful protest which degenerated into a criminal group of people ending up in dismembering statues of noble people who have been respected for over 100 years in this country. I have no desire to alienate my brothers and sisters of whatever race we are. But we must come to the point of looking beyond our individual own possessive race and look to our society, which encompasses us all. We are Americans, regardless of our skin color or our teaching or learning or the way we have been brought up. This statue, I believe, needs to be replaced where it was. It stands for a man who was willing to take up arms and protect the Confederacy. All soldiers who are willing to put their life on the line and defend their turf from an invading force need to be honored. We have been honoring that soldier, unnamed and unnamed soldier. We have been honoring him for 100 years. We need not succumb to a pandemic consideration influenced by people.
Sir, your time has expired. Could you finish quickly?
I will be glad to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, next guest.
Mr. Tom Dennison.
Welcome, sir.
Tom Dennison, 109 Grove Street. Just looking ahead and seeing Farmville in the future. I get rather, just a dream for a moment. I see a place where if anybody is offended by anything, that anything should be questioned and talked about. And that's exactly what we're doing here tonight, and that's terrific. We're making steps towards a much better future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, next guest.
Mr. Ernest Tony.
Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor, Council. My name is Ernest Tony, and I know most of you have been here all of my life. My mother was born here, and my father, John West, was born right on Hill Street, 1898. I want to thank you for making a courageous decision to choose what is right and safe, knowing that it might be unpopular to some of your constituents. Some 50 years ago, elected officials in this town and county made a decision to cast a dark shadow on our community forever. I'm thankful that the council chose to be on the right side of history. They were on the wrong side of history. These statues represent a dark past in our American history. It's well documented, so the argument of trying to erase history is weak at best. Once history is told, you can't erase it. Because the Confederate States were not fighting for state right was a given, so that argument was also weak. These soldiers fought to retain their traditions and way of life, and most importantly, to hold on to their most valuable commodity, slaves, their cash cows. Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson, who were honored Confederate generals, were both slave owners. Lee was a brutal slave owner. Once having 3 runaways tied to a pole, stripped to their waist, and ordered the overseer to give them 50 lashes in the public square near the Arlington House. When the overseer refused to whip the girl, a constable stepped forward, and Lee told him, I quote, "Put it on her well." She was given 20 lashes. These statues are old relics of a dark past long gone, but we still have people who worship them as though with reverence, as if they are some deity. They want to honor these soldiers. Black men and women have fought in every war in American history, including the Civil War. Most were promised their freedom if they fought. We are being asked to honor soldiers whose main purpose was to keep 4.5 million black people in slavery in the South. Well, my father, who was a young soldier who fought in the Korean War, fighting for all of America, was not honored. My mother told me of an incident right here on Main Street in Farmville. She and my father were walking downtown Main Street. He was in his uniform, and he was very proud of being a soldier. They moved over to allow a white couple to pass. Evidently, that man felt that he didn't move over enough, so he spat on my father and said, "You better move over, boy. You're still nothing but a nigger in a fancy uniform." I asked my mom, why did he spit back on me? My mother said she had to hold him back because at that time, if you had retaliated, he would have been killed. I wish that we had the same sense of support that is given to these Confederate soldiers' memories to our soldiers here. There are soldiers right here in this community who are fighting every day, who fought in Iraq, Afghanistan, who are fighting with PTSD. This same energy should be given to them. Thank you for your swift and decisive action for the safety of the statue, but more importantly, for keeping this town that I know and love from becoming like Charlottesville, Richmond. It's the warmth of the people and the well-managed town that draws visitors to these peaceful streets to patronize, not a Confederate statue. I'm glad that the statue was not damaged, but a better serve its purpose is relocated to a Civil War cemetery or donated to Sailor Creek battlefield, which would be a more fitting tribute to their soldiers.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, next guest.
Ms. Alana Riviere.
Welcome, ma'am. Almost said sir. I've been saying sir, welcome, ma'am.
Finally got a woman up here again. Good evening, council members, Mayor Wyers, and all of our citizens here tonight. I'm glad that we've got the turnout that we've got. I started to come up here and have a conversation about the history of the Confederacy, but everybody has done such a good job of that. So I'm here representing myself as a member of Prince Edward County, as an Afro-Latina, as a member of the Sioux people, the River people. And I just wanted to kind of speak from my heart for a minute and talk about the honoring of our ancestors and our forefathers, whether it be through statues or in cemeteries. I also have family members that have fought in wars, not all of the wars I've agreed with personally, but I do still feel the need to honor my ancestors and the people that came before me and my family that fought for whatever their reasons were, right? You know where I do that? In the comfort of my own home. I have an ancestral altar in my home that I plaster with pictures of family members, letters from family members that have gone, and we also have cemeteries to be able to do that in. So I was actually kind of heartbroken in some ways watching the statues in Richmond and other parts of the country be torn down. Not because I was so concerned about the statues, but because things like that set a precedent, right? And I think that Farmville right now, our town, has the opportunity to set a precedent. Being in such a small area, we have the opportunity to make big change in relatively small amounts of time compared to other cities that have all of these other barriers to overcome and fight for. So when we're talking about honoring things and things that deserve to be honored, we want to make sure that the things that we're honoring aren't painful for other people in our community. There's over 8,000 African American people in Prince Edward County, right? Everyone has to come through town. Everyone goes up and down High Street at some point. And even if you're not on High Street, just knowing that that statue was there was a sore spot for me. It did feel like, for lack of a better term, an overseer, you know, kind of hanging over our head right there every time we're going up and down that block. So I do appreciate the swift action that you all took. I appreciate you doing things peacefully the way that you have, and I appreciate you bringing this conversation to the forefront, because this is where we have the opportunity for change through conversations like this. So I'm hoping that we'll continue to see forward progression in our county. Unfortunately, this town has been on the wrong side of history before, but I think this is a great opportunity for us to really get things right and change things, not just for right now, you know, and appeasing people right now. But again, just like the gentleman said a second ago, if you're looking forward at the future and where we want to see our community go, at the end of the day, the beloved community is all, or should be, all of our goal. And that means that we're living in a community and creating a community where bigotry, racism, hate, discrimination, just flat out isn't something that we can stand for anymore. And I'm grateful to you all for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam Clerk, next guest.
Mr. Nate Lane.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for having this meeting. Thank you for having me here. I didn't come with any prepared remarks either, but I did feel compelled to come. I am actually a historian. That's what I work in, and I was very tempted to give the recounting of the history and some of the things that I've heard here. Suffice it to say, the root cause for every cause in the Civil War was the institution of slavery and the protection of it. You can read it in the Articles of Secession from South Carolina before Abraham Lincoln ever took office. There is no doubt for the cause of that war. And I grew up, we had my great-great-uncle was William Archer Wilson. He fought in the Confederate Army. He's the first man to die in the Second Battle of Manassas, and I grew up with a bit of hero worship. And I was taught in these schools, and I know how I was taught about the Civil War. And then as an adult, I became a historian, and I learned how poorly I was taught. And I feel a lot for some of the people that stand up here and feel like something is being taken away from them, the heroes in their family and their past, because I learned the same things. But I will tell you, as somebody who was born here in 1978, one of the proudest moments that I had for a resident of this town was the night that that statue was removed. And in the space of 20 minutes, that lawn filled up with 50 people to watch it come down. Because we talk about the enlightenment of Farmville as we move forward in history, that casts a shadow over that enlightenment. Because there is no place to honor the cause of the Confederacy. We can remember our history, but we don't have to memorialize the darkest parts of it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, next guest.
Mr. Chris Burks from West Virginia.
He's already spoken.
I'll speak again. Give him.
Next, we'll go to our emails and letters. Bob Weber.
Do we have any other speakers out there? Bring me. Let's finish, Madam Clerk, with our speakers who are present, and then we'll move to the emails. Welcome, sir. Come to the podium and your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Michael Christopher Lucas. I've been a resident, and my resident address is 1105 Normal Road.
Okay.
And I've been a member of this community for a number of years. My family's from Southside Virginia, been here since 1730-something. I don't appreciate the removal of that Confederate monument that was here. It was a monument dedicated to, as a general monument, to all citizens that served to defend Prince Edward County, the state of Virginia, and the Confederacy from invasion from the north. And this is very emotional for me. I come up here and stand here before you do this, when I expect my community to stand together instead of being divisive as it has been, and allowing that monument to be removed the way that it was. And it's a shame on you for doing what you did. It was wrong. In the issues of the war, that war happened, it was 150 some years ago. Those people made their peace. Our ancestors made their peace. They worked hard at making their peace. In this community, they came together. There were free blacks in this community. And there were free blacks that served in the Confederacy. And they were paid. I've seen the receipts. I have them in my hands. As I was an intern at the Museum of the Confederacy in Richmond. This action has made more divisive, racially divisive, than across the board, across the United States. This is going on, and it's just absolutely heinous. It's wrong to degrade and dehumanize people that aren't here to defend themselves, to be accountable for what they already did. They lived their lives. And for us to dehumanize them and to trivialize and marginalize them to irrelevance is no better than the Africans who went to war and captured Africans and enslaved them and sent them here. It is the same type of thing. It is wrong to dehumanize what those people meant in their lives and what they stood for. They were just as human as you and I, as we are. And we can get along if you want to get along, but they have to accept that our humanity is complex and that they're individuals. And that's what that monument represents. It represents the humanity of people who stood in defense of themselves for the Constitution, for their constitutional rights, for the law. And that law at this point in time is threatened with this progressiveness. And to remove it from a point in public education, right in front of Long University, where we should stop and talk about these monuments. And what did they do? They went and erected another one. And that's really what I'm just trying to get to is that, look, for a point of education and understanding and for a better community, we need to consider each other and be inclusive of our Confederate past and their humanity along with everyone else's. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, do we have any more speakers outside who are waiting? Okay, Madam Clerk, if you'll read into the record those that sent letters and emails.
We have an email from Mr. Bob Weber.
The email states, I want to add my voice to those who support placing the Confederate soldier statue in the Confederate cemetery, and I hope you can move its base there too. It seems like an ideal location. Those who want to honor the statue and what it represents can do so, and those who are offended by it can avoid seeing it. I don't plan to come to the public meeting, and I don't support a referendum. Farmville doesn't need more arguing and controversy. Just do it.
We have an email from Ms. Emily Hollingsworth.
Good morning. I hope this email finds you well. To preface what's below are my own thoughts as a former resident of Farmville and not representing any organization or publication. First, thank you for holding tonight's hearing and for offering members of the community the opportunity to provide their opinions on where the statue should be placed. I'd like to add my voice to those who ask that the statue not be reinstated on High Street and instead be installed at the Farmville Confederate Cemetery. Thank you again for considering this matter.
Email from Ms. Mickey Carrington.
To Farmville Town Council, I am unable to attend the meeting tomorrow, August 19th, but I would like to express my opinion on where to place the Confederate statue that was removed from High Street. Only those of us who have experienced and still experiencing racial discrimination would know how it feels to continually be reminded by objects such as the Confederate statue. I believe it should be placed in the Confederate Cemetery or anywhere except in public view.
Email by Ms. Carrie Mosler.
Please put the Confederate statue in the Confederate graveyard where those who want to enjoy it can, and those who are hurt by it don't have to look at it every day. Taking it down was a huge step in healing for Farmville.
A letter from Mr. Robert Motley.
Farmville Town Council. The Civil War, 1861 to 1865, 32,750 Confederate soldiers were killed, and over 200 battles were fought in Virginia. In closing days, April 6th through 7th, Farmville was surrounded by skirmishes and battles. Nearly a quarter of General Lee's army, more than 7,700 men, were killed, wounded, or captured at the Battle of Sailor's Creek. Giving up on his plan to issue provisions to his men at Farmville, General Lee moved to cross the Appomattox River at High Bridge, 4.5 miles north. The federal commander, Grant, prepared his headquarters in the Prince Edward Hotel, Farmville. To the south of town, Sheridan's 2 divisions, followed by General Charles Griffin, 5th Corps, rode into the Prince Edward Courthouse area and went into This was not some foreign war fought on distant land. These were our family members, relatives, and neighbors engaged in these skirmishes around Farmville with many wounded and killed. The Confederate monument was built as a memorial to those who sacrificed their lives in battle. I fondly remember the stories my mother, Thelma Motley, told me about my great-grandfather who fought at Sailor's Creek and that he had a mini ball still in his foot. Few even remember the Prince Edward Hotel in Farmville. A failed effort to restore the hotel resulted in it being torn down. Erasing history, pulling down Confederate statues in the southern United States, and ISIS members burning and destroying documents, monuments, and artifacts that date back thousands of years. These are but two examples of people struggling to come to terms with not only the facts of history, but also its ever-present reminders. One author, Tony Parsons, argues in the June 18, 2018 online edition of GQ magazine that these occurrences are short-sighted at best, censorial, and a monumental mistake at worst. Our struggles and achievements in politics and culture must not include wiping history out by eliminating remembrances of the past, Parsons says. The Town of Farmville Town Council has the responsibility and challenge to assure a democratic process is followed in deciding what should be done with the Confederate monument. I support the position stated by Dr. Jordan in the Rotunda article that this should be decided by a vote of the people of Farmville. The Confederate monument has stood in Farmville since 1900, 120 years, as a memorial to our relatives and local Confederate soldiers who died in the Civil War, and should remain in that location.
Email by Ms. Faye Green.
I would like to thank you for your swift and appropriate removal of the Confederate statue on High Street. I believe that your action prevented Farmville from becoming the next Charlottesville or Richmond, where outside factions pleading their cause created violence, injury, and property damage, and where racial discord in those neighborhoods continues to disrupt the life of its citizens. The town of Farmville certainly did not need this symbol of repression. Something so offensive to most of our citizens should never have been placed. And now we have the power to fix that. We are not the town we were in 1903. Thankfully, our citizens do not have the same fear and hatred as their forefathers. We are so much better than that now. And the removal of this monument symbolizes our commitment to a community free from the repressive, derisive, and misguided ideals of the Jim Crow era. I am hopeful that the monument you have protected can be safely placed at the town's Confederate cemetery, where this soldier can appropriately rest in peace with his rebel brothers. Those who chose to show tribute to him can spend quiet time there with him for as long as they desire.
Email from Ms. Vicki Lee.
To the powers that be, as a citizen of the United States of America as well as Prince Edward County, it is my wish that the statue be retired to a museum or an appropriate area where someone can visit it if it is their desire.
An email from Mr. Charles Ironmonger.
The Mayor and Town Council of Farmville, Virginia. The War Memorial on High Street was erected by the citizens of Prince Edward County to recognize the men of Prince Edward County, including 16 black men, who received pension for their service to the Confederacy, along with many other Prince Edward men who served and helped defend their land from invading armies. It testifies to their devotion and self-sacrifice, no different from any veteran. 2. To disrespect the monument to our veterans of any war is to disrespect the veterans of all wars. Recent, August 22nd, 2017 through June 23rd of 2020, public opinion polling indicated a clear and often overwhelming majority of the American public thinks Confederate monuments should remain. 3. There is no Confederate war monument or memorial anywhere in America that excuses, praises, or even mentions slavery, white supremacy, or Jim Crow in any way. Any claim that this or other Confederate war memorials were erected in support of Jim Crow are baseless, untrue, and fabricated to change the narrative. Conversely, virtually all Confederate monuments extols the virtues of patriotism, self-sacrifice, bravery, and honor. Certainly these virtues are worthy of emulation yesterday, today, and indeed throughout the ages. 4. This war memorial has stood peacefully for 120 years. Even in the late controversies, our war memorial was not vandalized or the scene of violent protest or hardly any protest at all. Most of these who opposed the memorial are not from Farmville, Prince Edward, or perhaps not from Virginia. What gives them the right to tell the rest of us what this memorial stands for? And to what end is the removal proposed? What is to be accomplished? Will history suddenly be stained free and everyone happy? I think not. 5. At a personal level, this monument represents someone's ancestor who valiantly died on the field of battle. Many never returned home, many never even identified. A monument erected by an appreciative public, in many cases, was the only solace offered a grieving mother or wife. Consider how you would feel if the marker, headstone, or memorial of your great-grandfather was removed or disgraced. Destruction of historically important and culturally significant monuments are actions taken by fascists, Hitler, communists, ISIS, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and rogue regimes all over the world, such as China and Russia. Certainly it is not something we should even consider in this, our nation, our Earth's greatest experiment in liberty and democracy. If you, as town council, proceed with the removal of the Confederate War Memorial, how well will you sleep at night? Sincerely, Charles Iron.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Anyone else on the phone?
We have no one else signed up.
Okay, so we should give everybody an opportunity.
No.
Okay, no more emails, no more phone, no one else in the back? Okay, with that, I will bring the public hearing to a close. And we will now return to a regular order of business. The next item on our agenda is discussion of the emergency ordinance. Mr. Attorney, if you want to come forward so we can discuss that. Sir, if you'll just give them just a minute to clear out so we can all hear.
I figured that was you when I saw you.
Okay, I think that you all have by now had an opportunity to review the ordinance that we had not submitted to you last week. There have been 2 changes that have been made since last week, and they were to further clarify who would be exempted from this rule. And for clarification purposes, we've exempted schools and restaurants. Schools for obvious reasons, and restaurants because it's our position, it's the position of most localities in Virginia that they're already governed by the state board. If you all have any particular questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Otherwise, I think it's something you all vote on.
Mr. Attorney, just for a point of clarification, for those watching who may not have read it, we not only exempted schools and restaurants, we also exempted gatherings for religious exercise, including but not limited to religious ceremonies, wedding receptions, funerals, expressive activity on public street, public sidewalk, and demonstrations on town property or other property as permitted by a special event permit issued by the town manager. In addition, we added schools and restaurants.
Correct. Those others that you cited were present in the draft last week, but they are all included.
And it prohibits gatherings of more than 50 people.
Correct.
Are there any discussion, questions for the attorney?
I just have a discussion. I love this, honestly, but except for the fact of the 50 I called dispatch and talked to Jackie. She had did a little more research for me. The main calls that are coming in are for 20 to 30 gathering. I think 50 is too many. That's my argument. I think this is defeating the purpose. I don't think we're gonna get calls of 50. I think it's gonna be the 20 or 30, and I think 30 should be the cap. That's my opinion. So, they're not getting calls
Discussion.
for 50.
I totally understand your point. Probably one of the reasons we're not getting calls for 50 is they just now started coming back in mass.
I don't think we're gonna get calls of 50. I mean, I don't see that many gathering at one time. I just, if history, if we can show that in the county calls, then I don't see that. I see more of 30 and less on Bridge and Oak. That's my opinion on it. I just don't want to put this ordinance in place and it just be paper and no teeth to it.
I know the chief is not here, but I know,
The captain is back there. Now, you want to come up here so we can quiz you? If you want to take the chief's seat, you want to get in the hot seat.
you're in the hot seat today, right?
I know you're trying to stand back there in disguise, but I have a tendency to call people out, as you know.
But I
If
guess,
you answer that,
yeah, that's the question that I would have had for the chief, but if you can answer whether, not now, but in the past, the typical calls, have they been more than 50 when you had a problem, or less than 50?
Less than 50. The calls we're getting in the spring, the school closed in March, so the calls we started getting in late March and April were mostly for businesses that people thought were not obeying the governor's mandates, or there were some calls for gatherings or parties at private residences. Our experience was that most of those were probably even less than 30. 10, 15, but definitely less than 50. Not to say that those didn't occur, but the calls we received when officers got there were less than 50 people.
And then I guess my next question is, whatever we decide on, whether it's 50, 40, 30, we can come back and change it, correct, to adjust?
Yes.
So yeah, it is a question, to adjust the need of the town.
Emergency ordinance, I think it can always be amended.
I just,
With another emergency ordinance.
I just see them, if we change it to 50, that's fine, but I just see that crowd going to a restaurant, is what I see. So it's up to everybody else. I have no problem with 50, 40, or what have you, but we're just gonna have to adjust it.
I just pose this as a reminder to everybody. This isn't just about we can't make this just about a certain group of individuals. And so we're saying that if you wanted to have a surprise birthday party for a significant person and you wanted to have 20 people socially distanced in the backyard, if we go to 20, let's just use that figure. That means everybody in town cannot have that type of event.
And you're also talking about civic groups and chamber and things of that nature that are trying to get back to me. I wouldn't go below 50 right now.
I don't know, I just think it's pointless to do this with the college kids. If the 50, it's just not gonna work.
Well, we can't single them out, though.
Yeah, I know we can't single them out. I mean, I don't see any teeth to this.
I'm going to leave it alone. Okay. Mr. Benson?
It is a tough thing to consider. I know that like I spoke of earlier, another contentious area part of this emergency ordinance is the face covering component, and my belief being that with the face cover component comes perhaps a little more of those teeth. And then, if I'm anybody looking to gather any large mass of people, the component or the overhanging potential of trouble with not wearing a mask, I think is going to mitigate some of that. That would be my thought. Maybe perhaps I'm wrong, but my thought is that cuts into a little bit of that gathering issue. I think it does become difficult when we start getting, I'm 40, I'm pretty comfortable with. Getting to 30, I think does start to get a little in a range where there's some extenuating groups that you start to be concerned about. I'm good at 40. The mask component is one of those components that I think I know that the civil penalty aspect of that and enforcement of all of these are something we're all trying to wrap our heads around. But I think it at least adds a little more teeth to the emergency ordinances and creates or mitigates some of that desire to congregate.
I personally am comfortable with 50, and it's not like we're not going to be meeting again in the future. We can reevaluate if necessary, make adjustments, but I would personally like to start with 50.
Mr. Reed?
I'm fine with 50, but my only question is who's going to patrol these parties and gatherings, these backyards, and, you know what I'm saying?
Well, reference backyards, we would have to have a legal reason to be there. So obviously we would, my assumption is we would enforce this like most things, and it'd be complaint-based. As we try to enforce business closures and things of that nature, the first part of this, unless council directs us otherwise, I presume it would be complaint-based. As far as the enforcement issues, the county attorney and I have had discussions, and I think he's expressed those issues to the Finance and Ordinance Committee about what exactly we can and can't do. Some of that may still be up in the air. Obviously, an issue of summons, if it's a misdemeanor or less, if it's a civil penalty, we would issue a summons to those individuals who are violating whatever ordinance council chooses to pass.
I make a motion that we adopt the ordinance as presented to us with a limit of 50 people, with the contingency that if we see a need, we can come back and adjust accordingly.
Second. Motion and second. Question for you. This ordinance goes into effect midnight tonight if council approves it?
Correct, that's what it says.
And here's what we can do. If you see a need that it needs to be less, I have no issue issuing a call for a special call meeting. We could come back and adjust the number immediately, and at midnight that night it would go into effect, right?
As long as that's what the draft ordinance says, yes.
Yes, okay. So we can adjust it on a dime, so to speak. Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Any other questions or concerns while we have the town attorney here? Not, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
And Ms. Ames?
Yes.
Don't worry, Ms. Amos. There will be a lot more like that. It just happens to all of us.
So the ordinance goes into effect at midnight. I did speak, there's no one here from Longwood, but I did last week speak to someone from Longwood And if you will make sure they're aware of it, they will get out an email, they told me, to all of their students to let them know that this new ordinance is effective at midnight and help us promote the new ordinance.
So who, we're sending it to whom this evening?
Jessica.
Okay.
And I'd add, because also, we also obviously got a mutual aid agreement along with the police department, so I'm sure they'll also.
And Mr. Reporter, I'm sure that you will help us with getting a story out that we have adopted the ordinance and a great free marketing piece for us. Thank you very much. Safety, safety. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the appointment of a clerk of council. I believe that all of you have the signed agreement before you. Any questions on that? Because we need to appoint her in open session tonight, if everybody is in agreement. Are there any questions? If not, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we offer Sherry Scoggins the job of clerk of council.
Second. With all the terms spelled out.
With all the terms spelled out.
And she's already agreed to it, yeah. Motion and second, any additional discussion? If not, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Amos?
Yes.
And Mr. Cole?
Yes. Mr. Davis, any other matters under the other?
No, sir.
Madam Clerk?
That's finance ordinance.
Oh, yes. I forgot about us. I forgot about you. How could I do that?
You sent stuff to us last week. All right. The Finance and Ordinance Committee met yesterday afternoon to discuss the, I guess going back to the regular operations for some of the things that we suspended. We've got a lot of recommendations. We'll go through them one at a time so that everybody understands what we're doing. As far as the convenience fees go, with our new software, we have the ability to have some other options for payment. There's 3 plans. One's an agency funded, which basically means the town bears the burden of any electronic or credit card charges. That one we're not interested in. The hybrid plan is that customers will pay a 2.95% fee for credit and debit transactions. The town can offer e-checks where the residents can go online and actually pay their water bill with e-check. And it's only for online payments. It will not. This does not go with the on the phone payments. And there's 2 options with that. One, the town could do it at no cost to customers. It costs us 68 cents each time that happens. Or the town doesn't absorb the fee and the customer would have to pay $1.05 per transaction. The third part is an automatic withdrawal ACH, and that's an option we haven't elected. But the committee has recommended, and this is coming as a motion, that council reinstate the convenience fees for credit card payments effective September 1, 2020, and authorize the town treasurer to select a hybrid plan with Edmunds for electronic payments, with the customer paying the credit and debit card fees, and the e-checks will be with the town paying the 68-cent fee for that. And that is a motion.
Second. Motion is second. Any other discussion? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
And Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Next item?
The next is the suspension of penalties. The committee discussed this, and this recommendation bears all 3. It's a unanimous recommendation to the council, which I'll make as a motion, that council to reinstate adding the 10% penalties to past due water and sewer accounts effective September 1, 2020.
Second. Motion is second. Any additional discussion? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
And Mr. Benson?
Yes.
The next issue was the suspension of the disconnection of water services. As you know, we has stopped that as in March. That state requirement expired July 31st for us being able to cut off the water. Who knows, that might change this week. We know, but the committee discussed this. The committee's recommending the town treasurer send a disconnection notice to water and sewer accounts over 90 days past due, giving them 15 days to bring their account current or make payment arrangements or provide where they have applied or received assistance. And if payment's not received, they're subject to be disconnected with an additional $20 reconnection fee. And that comes as a motion from, and the committee unanimously approved that.
Second. Motion and second. Any additional discussion? Any questions? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Amos? Yes. Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
And Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
And the final one has to do with delinquent accounts receivable notices. This is being able, us taking any receivables delinquent over $500 to the town attorney would take to court. In reviewing those accounts, the committee has recommended that direct the town treasurer send one more letter to accounts over 500 and not proceed with attorney fees because of the doubtful collection process. And that comes as a motion to.
Second. Motion second. Any additional discussion? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Amos? Yes. Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
And Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Thank you. Anything additional?
That's all?
One more, food and lodging.
Oh, that's right. That wasn't on here. Did I miss it? Okay. Food and lodging penalties, the committee is recommending that we reinstate the food and lodging late fee effective, it would be September 20th because that's when the food and lodging will be due for August. Anybody that does not pay the food and lodging tax by September 20th will be subject to the penalty that is on the books. That comes as a motion.
Second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk?
Ms. Amos? Yes. Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
And Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Anything additional from this side of the table? From this side? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second. Motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Meeting adjourned.